Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Red Pill Podcast 175. Hope you're all having an amazing start to this new month of August and an amazing weekend so far. We have a lot to cover in today's podcast since the expected volatility that we got from the recent FOMC meeting, and shortly after followed with an update in this ongoing war. Unfortunately, that is the essence of the realm at this time, and I use the word unfortunately very intentionally because intuitively I'm feeling like this is just getting started, sadly. And that will absolutely affect many lives around the world, and it's super sad to know the code and to know it in advance. But I believe I'm doing my part to spread the knowledge and awareness, and I hope you're doing your best at that too. The world needs you right now, and I can sense that things are just heating up more and more. The squeeze is in, especially noticeable in hyperinflation. The world is distracted right now by all the elections going on, specifically what's going on in the United States. All the while, we're watching a world war develop month by month. And I believe this is a very critical month in that whole ritual. Again, unfortunately, I'm just here revealing the code. I know you guys are here to take the red pill, hence why we're calling it the Red Pill Podcast. But I did mention earlier that we have a lot to cover today. A lot has developed in this market over the past week, and we have 2 really important weeks ahead. We have a lot to cover with that decode today, so we're going to jump straight into things. But before we get started, please get relaxed, get comfortable, grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea if it's the morning time, or a glass of wine or beer or any beverage of your choice. I myself am going with some water and a little bit of cold tea. And you might hear a little bit of noise in the background. That's just a fan because where I'm at right now is like a gazillion degrees, and I'll be sweating with you alongside this entire podcast. So I am dedicated. But anyways, jokes aside, if you're new here, welcome to the Wolfpack. It's so great to have you here with us. If you've yet to get access to our Discord server, just go ahead and send me a direct message here on Patreon, and I will be able to reply back to that direct message with your Discord server invite. Please do not comment in this post below or email me with your Discord details. I cannot help you that way. If you're having trouble finding the way to direct message me, just click my profile picture here in Patreon. It's super simple. Again, I do not contact anyone through Discord. If there's ever anyone adding you as a friend through Discord, it is a scammer pretending to be me, so please watch out for that. I give that warning on a monthly basis. It still unfortunately happens from time to time that a new scammer infiltrates the server, creates a new account, and yeah, it is what it is. But I've been doing my best to keep everyone updated and to have the awareness that that is not me. The only way to contact me would be through Patreon direct messages. So I appreciate you following those instructions. If you've yet to get access to our Discord server, that is the only way I could help you out. And we have a couple of things to cover in this week with regards to the altcoins. We will be covering Render, Osmosis, Harmony 1. Also, I'll be going over gold and silver. It's been a little bit of time since then. My $2,400 USD target for gold was hit, and I did give updates back then on the last time I covered it of what my upside targets are for the next rally. I believe that'll be synchronized a lot with this October solar eclipse, so I'll be talking about that a little bit today. And other than that, let's get into today's podcast. In just a single week, Bitcoin went from 70K just earlier on Monday, leading into our monthly close, all the way from 70K down to 60K, dumping into the new moon. So just for a moment, I got to let everyone know, happy new moon and happy Mercury retrograde. So wacky weeks ahead. But we had this correction leading into the new moon. It's something that I warned about a month in advance due to a pattern that plays out annually regarding the August new moon. You probably heard me now say this 100 times in especially the past 2 podcasts. So we had this new moon effectively kind of from last night into today. I believe around 7 a.m.-ish New York Eastern time. So August 4th today. And as shown in my last Red Pill podcast, in many cases during the month of August, we see the dip continue a couple days after the new moon. That was absolutely the case last year as well. So I've been mentioning this August new moon dump that we had last year, and how there's a pattern between August 16th, which was actually the August new moon last year, throughout the 19th. And I say pattern because it's in many iterations of looking at how Bitcoin behaves in the month of August for whatever reason, sometimes even when the new moon isn't in the 16th, 17th, 18th, or 19th, we still get a pretty big move to the downside on those dates. So we want to keep our mind open for that. I talked about scenarios 1, 2, and 3 in my last YouTube video, and I gave you guys an update right at the beginning of last week to let you know more details about what to expect. And here we are. It is the new moon today, and we've watched Bitcoin come down to 60K. So pretty decent move to the downside. But of course, we still have the traditional markets closed today, and that matters a lot. With CME closed, precious metals, Forex, and the traditional markets, that puts a lot of emphasis on tomorrow. And that was something that I brought up as well in my last Red Pill podcast. So we'll be giving even more data for today in regards to how to prepare yourself for this upcoming week, even though we've been really ahead of this, which is great. I'm just going to do my best to add as much additional data as possible. And then again, we have a lot to talk about with the middle of this month, specifically August 15th and 16th. So we have this August 16th through 19th pattern, and then we have this upcoming August 19th will be our next full moon. So that's worth considering. Also, Mercury will be stationed retrograde until August 27th. So that would be into the third quarter moon. And 3 key notes to remember about Mercury retrograde in regards to the Bitcoin price chart we're going to be covering right now. I'm going to turn off these indicators and I'm going to pull up these drawings on the chart. And all I really want you to focus on is these red boxes. So these red boxes are all the time that Mercury stationed retrograde. All right. So the first key point is that wherever Bitcoin closes on the first day of Mercury retrograde is usually very close to the price that Bitcoin closes when Mercury stations direct again. Meaning in plain English, Bitcoin is essentially flat during Mercury retrograde. It's the case a majority of the time. Actually, 8 out of the last 10 Mercury retrogrades, Bitcoin was flat from the first day we closed to the last day when Mercury went direct. Now, the second key point is that we tend to see a bullish fake out 5 to 7 days into Mercury retrograde. So by day 5 through 7, we can see a move up that gets rejected and comes back down, and that would align with this month between August 9th and August 12th. So I want you to take a note of that, because also 8 out of the last 10 Mercury retrogrades had this day 5 to day 7 bullish fake out. This isn't just my opinion. This is the way Bitcoin has been trading over and over and over again. With out of the past 2 years, 2 iterations weren't the case. So 80% of the time, Bitcoin's flat and has pretty much the highest it goes is by day 5 to 7. So this would be one of the earlier iterations right around our solar eclipse that we had, the Great American Eclipse. And as you can see, day 7 was the highest we went, and then we peaked and fell. I just want you to keep that in mind now, because we've talked about this a lot lately. Especially throughout the past 2 years here on this channel. But if you're new here, you're going to be living through a Mercury retrograde with us. You're going to see how Bitcoin behaves. And it's just something you really want to keep in mind so that you have awareness of why the market's moving the way that it's moving. Okay. Now, I want you to also keep in mind that we're just starting Mercury retrograde, and we talked about day 5 through 7 being effectively August 9th through the 12th. like kind of in that range, meaning it's August 4th, and the next 48 hours, so the next 2 days, have a lot of potential to see more downside before this bullish fake out. And if that was to happen, you want to consider that we can still recover and be flat and end Mercury retrograde at the same position as where we started. So that's just using the data that we see cyclically. It's not 100% accurate, but still 80% of the time it's been working. And day 7 of Mercury retrograde is between August 11th and 12th. This is like where we're dialing in the code a little bit more. So day 7 is like the 11th into 12th of August. And it's right at the end of the 33rd Olympics, transitioning into the 33rd week of the year, which is a decode that I've been talking about for months now, okay? So another thing to keep in mind for like this pump and dump idea. Lastly, key point number 3, before I mentioned 8 out of 10 of the last Mercury retrogrades were flat and also had a bullish fake out 5 to 7 days into Mercury retrograde. Now, some of you might be asking, well, what about those other 2 times? And during those 2 iterations, Bitcoin was actually very bullish. So we have this example over here, where in this red box, you can see this J curve, just a parabolic advance. And then you have this iteration over here, which was right into the end of the last bull run. Pretty much bullish the entire Mercury retrograde phase. So important to talk about those 2 iterations because there's also a pattern, I believe. And the pattern that stands out to me is it's the last Mercury retrograde of the year. So we can see over here in 2021, this was starting in September, ending in October. That was the last Mercury retrograde of 2021. We had this right here starting right there at the end of 2022 in December 29th, pivoting through the beginning of the new year, but still technically the last Mercury retrograde of the year. And then even 2020. So that's 3 years in a row. We have right here from October to November, the last Mercury retrograde of 2020, and we were bullish through that. And then you could see the one before that effectively flat. The one before that led to a very famous crash you all know of, the C19 crisis. But still pretty fascinating that there is a pattern. It's the end of 2020, the end of 2021, and the end of 2022. Those were your bullish Mercury retrogrades. Now, since Mercury will be stationed retrograde again in November, then that makes the November 25th through December 15th Mercury retrograde the last Mercury retrograde of the year. So my intuition tells me that this will be a very, very bullish period for Bitcoin. So take a note on that. It'll also be when the Saturn retrograde is sort of wrapping up as we move through America's Thanksgiving. So some people call it like a Christmas rally, but I think there's a little bit more to it than that, right? There's a lot more esoteric elements at play. First of all, it's not even about Christmas. It's about Saturnalia, but that's another side note. We'll cover that another time. So for this Mercury retrograde, we need to see how this first week goes. It'll be difficult to tell until we get past the first week of, are we going to have that bullish Mercury retrograde, which is rare? We only get those about 20% of the time. Or are we going to get the usual thing where we're flat? Now, we could have down initially and then a recovery and still end flat, or slightly within the range of what happened a couple days before Mercury stationed retrograde. All in all, it kind of just tells us that we have a lot of things to consider. We've been doing very well at aligning it all. I prepared you for this idea of the August new moon dump, which we typically see, and the fact that it extends a couple days after, usually. And then we're talking about Mercury retrograde, which is through this time frame. We talked about Saturn retrograde a couple podcasts ago. We've talked about this 33rd week of the year, the 33rd Olympics, all of that stuff. All right. And I'm going to give more information to as much as I possibly can today over the next 20 minutes or so, so that you're not confused. Like, this is the most thorough I can be. I'm trying my best to take very advanced concepts and simplify it for you all. So again, for this Mercury retrograde, we need to see how this first week goes. But we know that there's a pattern. And let's just consider the date numerology and some other esoteric elements for the next 48 hours, since we have seen a couple of days after the new moon of August could be dicey. So let's get into that. Just going to return to this chart real quick. So we have tomorrow being August 5th, a Monday, a moon day. It has the same date numerology of the day after the Great American Eclipse, which the Great American Eclipse was very powerful, very important, I think, with this Trump assassination attempt and all the stuff that's going on with this war and where Paris fits into all of it with this Summer Olympics. There's a lot that's going on, and I think that eclipse played a huge role in it. And then the obvious stuff, like the event that happened in Texas with the blackout right after that. Well, not right after the Great American Eclipse, but after the Great American Eclipse. It's like the second time that Texas has been seriously ritualized in the past 5 years, like really, really rough. But anyways, it's just a side note. Tomorrow, August 5th, it has the same date numerology as the day after the Great American Eclipse, April 9th. Of course, energy doesn't work on just one day. It's typically a 3-day window. You have the day before, the day of, and the day after. Look at it like they're all sharing a trinity together. You have before, the now, or the present, and after, right? That's just the way time works. And, or, you have birth, life, death. You have the before, spirit, matrix, simulation, experience, and then the afterlife, however you want to look at it. Everything's in trinities, effectively. So numbers work the same. So if you look at the eclipse date, you always want to consider the day before and the day after. With your decodes, it's the same thing with something like an important date of a birthday or an event that happened. Think of it also like with events, like you had the Titanic sinking, where it started on the 14th and ended on the 15th of April. And we've seen so many symbolic rituals on April 15th in our lifetime. I would say in our lifetime, but historically also, massive amount of examples. So getting back to this, I believe this 57 has been important because I'm going to show you a couple other examples of where we're seeing this double-digit date numerology of 57, where it's like the day after a significant alignment or event. So we have the day after the Great American Eclipse, 57 date numerology. We have Rosh Hashanah, which is the 3rd of October. That will be a 57 double-digit date numerology, which is also the day after the next solar eclipse. And then you have the day after Chinese New Year, which would be the 11th of February, also a 57 double-digit date numerology. Another thing to mention from last week's decode is that we have August 15th. I brought this up many times. It is 33 days after the Trump assassination attempt, which I felt was important to bring up because of the 33rd week of the year. And it's the day leading into the 137th day of the year, which 137 is your 33rd prime number. Okay, so the 15th, 16th, and 17th is like the trinity of days that you want to keep in mind, like I mentioned a little bit earlier. So it's also important to mention that August 15th, 33 days after the Trump assassination attempt, will be our next lunar eclipse on the 17th of September. So we have a lunar eclipse coming up in 44 days from today. Interesting. 44, symbolic of two choices or two doors to walk through. If you want to know a little bit more about the 4. 4 is more a man-made idea. The square, the rectangle, you don't really see those in nature. The 4 corners. So even the map that we use, the square map, that's, yeah. But think books, think maps, think all the man-made stuff, doors, windows, these 4 corners, they're very much matrix-oriented concepts. Even this idea of the 4th dimension being time, that has to deal with a physical existence. Again, all of which is determined out of the human experience. We never check in with the dolphins on their opinion of what we're doing to the forest. or yoga or our diets that we have. We don't care about what nature thinks. We don't care about what the animals think. Humans and our human experience dominates all, and well, that's why we fell to the state of consciousness we're in. But anyways, let's continue. We had this August 15th date, definitely important now because I'm realizing that we have 33 days before tied to the Trump assassination attempt, and 33 days after would be our upcoming lunar eclipse, making August 14th naturally 33 days before the next eclipse we have. And since we have our theme of everything being the day after the important date that I mentioned, this adds even more importance to the date of August 16th. Again, if you wanted to call the lunar eclipse on the 18th, then you're still with the 33. If that's how you want to do it, that's fine as well. So we have August 16th, the day after the 15th that I was talking about. 137 days left in the year. That's your 33rd prime number during the 33rd week of the year. As you can see right here, August 12th through August 18th. We're talking about August 16th. And this is a very important note that it's on a Friday. So the traditional markets will actually be open that day, which could ramp up the volatility even more. Similar to how we had an update on Friday with this, please, I might be wrong with this, so because there's so many things on my mind, but the assassination of the leader of the political party of Hamas. So Ishmael is his name. I believe that was on Friday. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. It might have been Thursday, but it happened during the week, and that put a lot of pressure on the markets. And I believe the markets have something interesting to open up to tomorrow on the 5th of August, especially if there is a new update in this Iran-Israel conflict. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment because we have something else to point out. But a little bit ago, I mentioned the pattern for Bitcoin between August 16th and August 19th, and that's all fitting within, except for the 19th. 16th, 17th, 18th is fitting into the 33rd week of the year. So the fact that this date is on a Friday, keep that in mind because the market will be open. And now the most important part of that decode for August 16th was that it's a 68 double-digit date numerology. That 68 is the war code. Even though my intuition tells me there will be an important development in this war within the next 48 hours. Like I could feel it in my bones. When we connect August 5th, for instance, to that very key date of October 7th of last year, the day that Israel declared war on Hamas, well, you guys know. That's 303 days apart. So you remove the 0 using the rules of numerology, you have 33, and this is during the 33rd Olympics. And October 7th is the day leaving 85 days left in the year. That August 5th day that we're talking about tomorrow is the exoteric Gregorian 8-5 date. So we have 85 here, we have 85 here. And also we have this 33 connection with the 33rd week of the year, the following week. Remember, I said everything is the before, the during, and the after. That's your trinity of time. That's like the ripple effect, okay? So speaking of which, with that 68 and the war code that I mentioned a moment ago, that would naturally make the next day of August 6th the 6-8 date written internationally in the Gregorian system. And if you think about this day of October 7, 2023, that was on the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, which was on October 6th of 1973, perfectly 50 years after. And this October, its octo is 8, that's the prefix. This should actually be 8-6 or 6-8 day. And that's the day leaving 86 days left in the year. That was when the Yom Kippur War started, or the Ramadan War. Crazy, right? Because it's tied to the exact same cultural moment and in the same timeline of the 1972 Munich massacre. So we have 1972, 1973 really projecting a lot for what we're experiencing right now. Anyways, 8-6 day, October 6th, 8-6 days left in the year. We have the 8-6 date this year, and we were just tying it to the recent war that started with this 303 days apart, and then we have the day after. Just some stuff to keep in mind. But getting back to that 68 connection, remember, even one of the most famous market crashes ever, which was the great crash of October 24th back in 1929, a very long time ago. This had a 68 days left in the year on this date. So it's clear they're ritualizing this number 68. This was one of the largest sell-off of shares in U.S. history. 68 days left in the year on this day, and one of the most famous market crashes ever. Okay, so they're clearly ritualizing this number 68 intentionally. Again, making August 16th, the 68 double-digit date numerology, massively important for me and my work. But lastly, to wrap up today's decode, we have this Tuesday coming up, and the only reason I'm talking about it is because we had a couple connections, but also it's a couple days after the August new moon, and that tends to be where Bitcoin has its big tumble, you know, kind of the lowest it likes to go in the month of August specifically. And this exoteric 6/8 date, the war code, speaking of war, it's on a Tuesday, which is Martes, the day of Mars, the god of war. It's 2 days after this new moon. And if we look at the last year of the dragon in 2012, this will be really interesting for you guys, because 2012 Bitcoin was trading during a year of the dragon. And you see this big move to the upside. Let me show you. Put the moon phase indicator on. We have the new moon. Bitcoin corrected 14% of the new moon, and then look at that, it bottomed out 2 days later, and that was 48 hours after the new moon, which would synchronize with August 6th this year, this upcoming Tuesday. Crazy, right? Because that was the lowest Bitcoin went for the rest of the cycle and pretty much the rest of eternity. So I would not sleep on that if Bitcoin goes lower over the next 48 hours, like especially if it's triggered by war, because they have the perfect thing to blame. And we know really at the end of the day that Bitcoin and blockchain technology is the big solution for the instability to come when we have more war develop, right? That's why during the Russia-Ukraine invasion, when everyone started sanctioning Russia and Russia was just like banned by the world, you know, they were boycotted by the entire world, aka Zion. We saw that Bitcoin responded very bullish to that moment because Bitcoin is and this isn't my opinion, we're just talking about the facts of how everything went down. But exoterically, Bitcoin's a solution to shit like that. Like if you wanted to say no to a country and just block all their payments and block all the money coming in, well, then there you go. You could utilize this alternative payment system, right? That was the concept to begin with. You don't remember? The idea behind the creation of Bitcoin, the genesis of Bitcoin with the white paper, it was in response to the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis. So bad loans and just poor money principles in general, over lending and having too much leverage. And the one thing that's really destroying the crypto market right now is leverage. I mean, I know that it's fun to play with leverage. I myself am a professional trader, so I've gotten a better relationship with it over time, but I can see that it's really holding this market back from becoming more sophisticated. And it's the whole market. It's not just crypto. Look at options. Look at everything else that's going on. It's an opportunity to make a ton of money, but also it's an opportunity to lose everything. And that's typically how it goes for 90% of people that play with margin. So we're in a great bubble right now, guys. We're in the bubble of bubbles. Some might call it the everything bubble. I don't disagree. And I think this bubble still has a little more room to expand. And I think 2025 will be the pinnacle in many ways of that expansion, leading into our lunar eclipse in March in the year of the snake. So I'll talk about that more as the months progress, but for now, let's just wrap up today's decode and move into some of these charts. Interestingly enough, the date numerology, one moment, let me get back to some of these notes. We were talking about the year of the dragon in 2012, and this move up into the August new moon, followed by 48 hours after a huge dump, And we have it on August 19th. And remember what I said earlier, the pattern for Bitcoin is August 16th or August 19th. But I want to show you the date numerology going back to August 19th of 2012. And you're going to see it's a 59 date numerology. And that's really important because the date numerologies are almost the same. 58, 59, 22, 23. They're within one from each other. But that's not as important as the fact that the 59, if you remember this from my Year of the Dragon Decoded, that's Dragon in Gematria. 59 was one of our key numbers all year, and that's the 17th prime number. All right. So we talked about this in the Year of the Dragon. Rewatch that if you haven't already. Now there's some syncretism here with this upcoming Wednesday too. I know I'm bringing in a lot right now, but I told you the 33rd week of the 32nd and the 33rd week of the year are massive. They're absolutely massive. So I think it's the 32nd, 33rd, 34th, 33 is the middle point. It's the number of transmutation. And then you have before it and after it is kind of that reset moment, reset of energy. And then after that, we should be out of the weeds. But now that we're seeing the way that this market's been behaving based on these numbers, just look at that 59 synchronicity. We have this 59 synced up with the last year too. I mean, there's probably so much more code we could bring to this, but it's been probably the millionth time that I've said 32nd to the 33rd week of the year is everything moving forward. So that mid-cycle correction that happened during the Year of the Dragon, it happened with it correcting perfectly into the 59 double-digit date numerology during the Year of the Dragon, and Dragon equals 59. So there was a lot of code syncing up for that as well. Also, I want you to look at how the days left in the year for that were 134. That's an anagram of pi. So pi 3.14, it's in that code. Now, I've already mentioned this in regards to August 16th, the key date that I've been talking the most about, and October 7th. Again, we talked about this earlier too, the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, and how between these two dates are 314 days apart. This was a huge war update, and this is a war code date, so you can't disregard this. Again, the 3.14 pi. So this matters a lot because in the last cycle, Bitcoin topped on November 10th of 2021 with the 314 date. Bitcoin hit 69K on the 314th day of the year. That was a pi ritual coming full circle. And what's so crazy about pointing this date out is if we connect November 10th, 2021, the day that Bitcoin hit 69K and topped out for the rest of that bull run, and we connect it to this upcoming Saturday, we can see that these are 33 months apart. So I just pulled out another 33 connection for this week during the final days of the 33rd Olympics, which ends the following date. And you can see how August 10th and November 10th are both 62 date numerologies. So there is syncretism there. But that 33 is wild. How we keep getting the 33 over and over and over again, just 2 days before the 33rd week of the year. So literally this makes this week and next week some of the most important numerological connections that I've made for the entire year. Absolutely mind-blowing. And remember, 33 is the number of transmutation, taking something from one form to the next. So we know Bitcoin typically has a bullish fake out about 5 days into Mercury retrograde. I've discussed that a little bit earlier. That synchronizes with August 9th through August 12th. And the timing would align with this upcoming Friday and throughout the weekend. But we have those days over the next 48 hours or so where there's a pattern with Bitcoin where we could effectively go a little bit deeper. And that would make sense coming off of the recent war update and new war updates, especially if we are to have that retaliation from Iran to Israel. That could be happening before you guys even watch this video. You know, it's really like the final moments for something like that. But I would be looking from Monday into Tuesday. So from tomorrow with that 8-5 connection into the 68, that's really what I believe is the way it's going to go down. All right. Now I have this new update with the 33rd month since Bitcoin hit its cycle peak in 2021. And it will be within the 33rd month all the way until like September 9th. Okay. So, like September 10th, it will switch to 34. So, please keep that in mind. Funny enough, 2 days later, on September 11th, one of the most famous dates for truthers, is the next cyber polygon. So that's a huge red flag, isn't it? With this CrowdStrike event that happened right after there was a bullet that hit the crowd that missed Trump, a CrowdStrike, and then another CrowdStrike. I mean, it's so ritualistic, it's wild. And then we have Cyber Polygon on September 11th this year. Like, and also keep in mind, I know I said I was going to finish, but it's like I could keep decoding for a million years. But look at how it's a 64 and 19 date numerology on September 11th. Look at the day Trump's assassination attempt. You can't make this shit up. 64 and 19, same. Crazy, right, guys? So yeah, I mean, big stuff, big stuff ahead in this month and in September as usual. You guys know that typically on the world stage, specifically September and October are some of the biggest months, especially for markets. We can see when we look at Bitcoin seasonality, September is the only month we typically get in the red. And October and November are huge recoveries. But what we've watched happen on the world stage regarding ritual market crashes, it's October. And I'm not saying the market's going to crash this year because that's very rare to have an October market crash right before an election. But I would not be shocked if during November there is some weird stuff that goes down with cybersecurity. There's so much room for fishy, voting stuff to go. Like, I mean, you guys know how it's all rigged anyways. That's why we call it a selection. But it's how do they manage the people's energy in the ritual? That's really what it's all about. And you got to think that way too. How is the apex predator managing the energy? It's the same thing with market behavior. When they get it really bullish and the market's really overextended, that's when everyone piles in. That's when everyone starts wanting to get invested at the top. And then that's typically, I'm early most of the time on the way I switch into my sentiment. You guys heard me back in the probably the end of January throughout February. I was already getting worried about people getting so bullish. It was a very dangerous thing to see people getting so bullish all at the same time. And that's why I flipped for a moment and I said, I'm not expecting price discovery right now. And I would not be shocked if we had at least 100 days of sideways before and after the halving. So that would be 50 days before the halving and 50 days after. And now it's been even much more sideways than that. And that's good. It's good to be early in the chair in the game of financial musical chairs. You don't want to be the last ass standing up. It's just, you got to pay attention to sentiment. You got to pay attention to the way the apex predator uses your emotions. And once you could kind of conquer that, you become a much more sophisticated investor. And that's the beautiful thing about this community that we have, right? The fact that we could all come together. And if you're ever getting off vibe, you can share how you're feeling, be vulnerable, let us know your thoughts. There's nothing wrong with having the emotions, okay? It's just don't do anything stupid with your money when you're emotional. It might be the best time when your trigger finger is itching to just reach out to the community and be like, hey, this is how I feel. This is where I'm at with my investment thesis. This is how things have been going for me. Leverage on the community. Don't just do something stupid because you watched a YouTube video and then you start complaining and blaming people, We are a resource here, a lot more than just me. I know I'm a resource, but this beautiful community we have of so many amazing decoders, technical analysts, traders, and people from all walks of life and all countries around the world. That is a huge opportunity to tap into, so utilize it. Now let's get into this market, review these charts, starting with Bitcoin and follow up this last week of price action. As you're already aware, we've seen Bitcoin take about a 10% move already to the downside, 14% at this moment. Pretty big correction. I want to pull up this horizontal chart here, and I would like to, while I'm on film with you guys, I don't need to say this to the YouTube world, but I just want to show you guys Again, as supporters of my art, I'm going to remove this on film, this cup and handle thing that a lot of people wanted to entertain for a while. I've kept it on my chart. But for me, it was all about the horizontal trading range, and it's all about Wyckoff method. And the thing about Wyckoff is we had this schematic playing out, an accumulation schematic with 1 drive to the downside, 2 drives to the downside, 3 drives to the downside, low, lower, low, lower, low, where this would be your spring, or like the rip the band-aid off moment, the deepest and the most ugliest part of the correction. And I'm not talking about the entire crypto market. I'm specifically talking about Bitcoin right now. And then you get a buyback. Now, what becomes a little precarious is if Bitcoin cannot hold this 60K territory on a macro close. We really want to see that hold. And it's a huge red flag if Bitcoin starts closing below 55K again. Because 4 drives to the downside of lower lows is definitely a sign of weakness, especially with these lower highs, okay? And that's pretty clear too. We're in a major bull flag right now. And you could pull the staff from as low as the October solar eclipse if you want. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but the timing from this pivot point to our top is probably very similar between the top, or at least the start of this horizontal trading range, and where Bitcoin is today. So let's just go ahead and measure it together. We're just taking from this pivot point of the eclipse and bringing it to 152 days. And then here we have from the start of this trading range, we're at 157 days. We've been pretty much trading sideways as long as the last breakout lasted. Keep that in mind. And that's actually quite healthy. It's very healthy to see. It would be good even if we extended longer. I mean, I know people hate this stuff, but you want to know the truth of truths? The more we're boring, the more we extend, the more you go up, the crazier the breakouts are. So patience is necessary in this whole game. Now that we've have that out of the way, we're just kind of looking at this structurally, and the fact that we got this 382 back test here, I know it's a little bit hard to see because it's hidden under this parallel channel. Let me go ahead and delete the parallel channel too. That's probably unnecessary at this point. So I've removed this cup and handle thing. I removed this smaller parallel channel at the bottom. And now we're really just working with like the key data here, which is our monthly support, a little bit above 60K, and our macro resistance, which is 71.5K. And we're still ranging. We're still in the same range between 60 to 70K for the past 5 months. We just want to hold structure now. So it'd be really shitty for Bitcoin to start closing below this 55K territory. Excuse me for saying that, just being honest with you all. You have to be in my position. But this could very well flip over the next 48 hours or so. We can see something like, and this would not be weird, if we had Bitcoin fill the lower CME gap, which is like exhausting to talk about at this point, but it's important that I do. So if we had Bitcoin fill this lower CME gap, get to slightly below 59,000, which is like what, 4% away? Yeah, look, fucking 4%. We could do that over the next couple of hours, let alone days. Bitcoin should just fill that, rip off the band-aid, and then it would not shock me if on day 5 to 7, which would be leading into this upcoming weekly close, like next Friday into next Sunday, Bitcoin pops up, gets like back to where we are today, maybe even 62 or 63K, and then gets rejected there to come back to 60K, a little bit of flat through the 16th, 17th, and 19th, and then we recover out into September's new moon. If that's how they want to play it, I would not be shocked. I just combined everything for you right there. I combined day 5 to 7 Mercury retrograde fake out pump and dump kind of idea, filling the CME gap a couple of days after the new moon of August, which is today. And if they want to pop it up now into Friday and Sunday, then we could still fill that CME gap through the 16th, 17th, and 16th through 19th, get into that 58K territory, do that low into the full moon time frame. That would not be weird at all either. So all in all, it seems that this CME gap is to get filled because of its proximity to where we are now. Not weird at all. Now, one thing I could say with a high level of certainty is if Bitcoin was to do that, ETH might break another leg lower. ETH might actually make a new low below 2,800, and altcoins are going to get smashed again. So it's more buying opportunities. It's fucking wild to watch how long they're dragging this out. But if we look at the time frame of Bitcoin between the C19 crash and when we really started breaking out, you can see from this high peak over here, it took about almost a full year, 290 days. It's difficult to align this peak, but remember, the lowest we went in 2020 was March 13th, and then the highest we went for Bitcoin in our in this recent year was March 13th. So, I mean, even if you wanted to measure from there until when ETH started getting really crazy parabolic, it would be 290 days. Okay, so if we took from March 13th, 290 days brings us into the end of the year, guys. So we're not too far off based on a lot of metrics. But yeah, I could tell right now that the sentiment is getting very worrisome for a lot of people. A lot of new investors are not happy with this taking so long. And that's fine. I think everyone needs to go through that emotion. I've been through it before. I've also been through crazy crashes before. I've been through crazy volatile pump cycles. Like, I've been through enough now to the point where I'm just emotionless about it, because there's no point. There's no point of getting emotional to something that you had opportunities to react or respond to. It's so much better to just be calm, navigate this with some desire to learn in the process. That's an amazing way to profit off of markets. I think what happens is people get too caught up in other people's opinions, even people who are respected, like Michael Burry, or I don't, name some famous guy out there who's a chart analyst, and like there's a lot of respect and a lot of admiration for these people. But usually you don't hear those same people telling you about market psychology and telling you about how to emotionally handle these swings. So I try to focus on that as much as possible, even more than the charts, I think, because it's crucial stuff. It does not matter how deep a market goes or how high it goes if you don't have the stomach to deal with the swings. But getting back to this, one key update that has happened for Bitcoin over the past couple days is this back test of the 200 moving average. So I did talk about this in recent videos. We had the back test of the 200, we actually broke below the 200 simple, and we're within the 200 exponential, but it's basically right there. And that aligns with the CME gap below 59,500. So a back test on that level is not crazy. It's a pretty normal thing to see Bitcoin come back to that level on these deeper corrections. It's when we start closing significantly below that is where things can get problematic. But all in all, we get pretty close to this on most corrections. As you can see, even in this last cycle, which we've talked about, topping on August 18th and then having this correction into September, we got within a couple percent of this 200 EMA. And of course, this data got very skewed because of the C19 crash, but needless to say, that's a solid level. And then here you have late March dump in 2017. Hit the 200 exponential. Here we have July, almost at the 200 exponential. You could dial this in even more if you'd like. It's not an exact science. It's just to give you an extreme piece of data to consider for mid-cycle corrections. So we did talk about the pullback to the 200 exponential. We're effectively there. A little bit more room to go, like a 0.2%, and we'll hit it. But then we also have an incoming wolf cross with downside implied. So this is a really important reason why I would like to have Bitcoin just flash below 59 soon and then get bought back up. There's nothing wrong with a wolf cross on a daily chart to the downside. It's when we start seeing it on big like 5 days and weekly charts, we're good to go on the weekly. We're definitely good to go on the bi-weekly. We're definitely good on the monthly, you see. So on these macro time frames, that's important. And I know we just started the month of August, but we want to look out for this 8 simple moving average, or the 8 simple moving average to hold into this monthly close. So anything above 60K would look good, but 61 would look better, and 65,000 would look even better. So Bitcoin having a end of the month rally in August would be like that Hail Mary savior. But I think that would make the structure of this market look a lot better. So we've talked enough about the Bitcoin correction concept and where it could come down to. You have the line in the sand number of 55K. We really don't want to see closures below that. Weekly's looking pretty decent, even though I know we're below the 21 EMA. The 34 EMA is like the new 21 EMA for the 2017 cycle. So that's been pretty cool to see some development in Bitcoin. And our corrections are not nearly as much, because if you take from our all-time high at right around 74K, you see that we've only corrected 27%. With 2016 and 2017 cycle, we were correcting almost 40% all the time. So the asset is maturing, and it's holding its higher lows and higher highs in general. Like if I was to turn off everything, you could see for yourself that Bitcoin has closed many new all-time high weekly candles. And from a monthly perspective, we're looking very, very good, because these were your high tops in 2021. We're just back testing them right now, but it has been a pretty arduous back test time frame. Craziest bull flag we've seen in a while, with the potential to bring us into multiple six figures even. Not getting ultra bullish for no reason. It's just what the charts are showing me. We're going to be quick on Ethereum, because Ethereum is basically backtesting support now. You can see this support has started effectively all the way back in February, but it's much more noticeable after the April solar eclipse. It's about 110 some odd days of holding that support. And remember, the ETH ETF was launched just recently, and we still took a tumble after that, a sell-off. That looks very similar to what Bitcoin did after the approval and launch of the first crypto ETF for Bitcoin. Very similar. And then you guys remember, that was a crazy fake out. So this was the day Bitcoin's ETF was approved on the 10th. The following day was when it was launched. It had a sell-off, and then that ended up being a bear trap. Would not shock me if it's a similar case for Ethereum as of this time, clearly. Because that means now institutions are really settled on this asset, and they've allowed some new rules regarding the SEC. So for Ethereum and specifically. Yep, and we can't really get bullish. We can't really look for price discovery on ETH until we see price discovery in Bitcoin. So we have our local high at about 4,000 and this level at about 3,800. There's been a lot of chop in ETH lately, and that makes it choppy for the entire altcoin market, which is pretty obvious on every single altcoin you look at. XRP. All right, so we have our main chart for XRP. We have started to pop out of this lower low bear trap. We made a huge move to the a huge move in XRP terms, but we still haven't quite breached this resistance line of 70 cents. And I talked about this in many updates, that we still need Bitcoin price discovery in order to see that move for XRP. So we need Bitcoin to break above 70K, and I think that would be in alignment with XRP at 70 cents. If we can see Bitcoin start closing dailies 70K, 71K, 72K, that's when I think this will be blast off time for XRP. But in the meantime, the analysis stays. I can't really give too much more of a update. But one thing I do like to see is the fact that we've popped out of this trading range and we've started back testing several several months of resistance, which led to our lower low. So if XRP can hold this 55, 54 cent level, that would look good, but I would not bet on XRP at this time. It's just a choppy asset. You guys know how it goes. These Bart Simpson heads are normal. We need Bitcoin price discovery to see things get really spicy in XRP. It's just the way it is. I know that could be discouraging for some people, but very positive news for many, because it's the simplest indicator of all time. Bitcoin breaks out into new all-time highs, XRP follows. Super simple. Okay, we're looking at gold right now. Gold has now recovered quite a bit off of a recent correction coming down into July, which I saw some pretty wild, gold down on silver down on July 25th, going even deeper. So yeah, tons of volatility still in precious metals. I mean, look at that. It's a 15% correction for silver. Wild to watch. And now we're looking pretty good for gold. We're in the process of making higher highs, higher lows in this price discovery. Sorry, 1 second. I'm going to go to like a 5-day or weekly. So yeah, like it is without a doubt in price discovery. Crazy to watch. And really positive for anyone that took, that opportunity in October of last year. Right around here. That was when I made my first gold investment. Some of you might remember it. It was leading into that event that happened in Israel. I got in below 1850, so 1840-ish is where I made a 10% of my net worth investment in gold, physical gold. I have not made any purchases since. It ended up being a really solid buying opportunity given where things are at currently. But, inflation is just so insane right now that it's like, this is bound to happen. There's no wizardry behind this. It's just the way that fiat money is designed to devalue, and gold reaps a benefit from that. Same thing with Bitcoin too. But the following target that I'm looking at for gold will be this, somewhere around 2,800. And it's not worth really timing this thing. I did make a note about September. But that has to do with a lot of different moving parts. Really, I think the best time would just be within 2024. I think that is a possibility. If we go from February to where we topped out before a little bit of sideways, it was about 67 days, a 22% rally. If we were to look out about 67 days or so from where we're at now, from the last low we had before the breakout, it would be around the beginning of September, around the September new moon. I do not know if we have the juice in us to make another 22% move, but if you were to see what 22% looks like, it actually gets you right to this 2.618 or $2,800 per ounce. So accomplishing that within the year of the dragon, I think is very possible, especially with Trump winning the election. I think there's a lot of syncretism between the people who are Trump supporters, conservatives, and precious metals holders. Not that I'm trying to say if you invest in precious metals, you're a Trump supporter. That's not what I'm saying here. You guys know what I mean. Like, ultra liberal Democrats don't give a shit about wealth. They want it all to be given away. They love getting taxed. They love the tax code. They love the IRS. They love the parasite system. So that's one thing that's obviously very nice about the conservative mindset, in that way that being more patriotic ultimately means you have more desire to learn about what is fucking you at the end of the day. And that is the IRS, that's the World Economic Forum, that's the World Health Organization, all that stuff. So when you are in the know, there's levels to it, of course. Hopefully people wake up to the ultimate truth, which is that all politics and all of this stuff is designed to incarcerate you spiritually. But of course you can't wake everyone up. Only some people are ready for that clear pill. You guys know. The only person who could save you is you. But side note, I think that thesis that I just shared a moment ago about like a Trump victory would have a lot to do with end of the year rally for sure. As for Kamala winning, I don't know how that would necessarily go. I've shared my thoughts yesterday in the live stream that I do believe that it could potentially create some big problems for civil unrest in the U.S. Again, not entirely sure how that will all pan out, but I think they've made enough documentaries and movies, and even in Hollywood, to show us how that could potentially go. So anyways, let's wrap up this analysis. Gold is in the process of breaking out. I believe the RSI is probably reset by now. Yes, it is. So we've had enough months in this sideways trading range to continue about 118, 120 days. We're ready for taking another leg up. And this back test of the 55 simple after the wolf cross back here is great to see. Okay, so when you have a wolf cross of the 8 above the 55, you want a little bit of overextension and then a back test of the 55 followed by a new daily close higher high. So that's the technical play. If we can see gold close higher than 2,470 on the daily, which is like where we got rejected back on Friday, that's where I would anticipate this to start moving into 2,500 and higher. And then the initial rally should take us at least to 2,600. There you might get a little bit of sideways, maybe a little bit of a corrective phase, but 2,800 is still my level that I'm looking for next on gold. Ultimately, 3,800 would be gorgeous, but I cannot say that that will be possible in the short term. That might take us until at least the next Shemitah, but I'm not sure. I'll cover that. I'll cover that another day. As for the silver play, silver is really, really suppressed. I mean, this is obvious. This was the key line, and we broke below it right here at $28. Funny, I was just talking about $2,800 for gold, but I've had this line in mind for a while now. Let me go to the weekly. Coordinate 28. Sorry. I would like to look at this on like a line or area chart. That's really the smartest. Yeah, and I would look at this peak right here because that was as high as you went in August 2020 after the C19 crash. We're looking at closes, by the way. I mean, we're effectively just back testing it. I think that's more fair where I put that trend line. So we've started to break out in silver, and the issue is silver has yet to experience price discovery going back to 1979. It's 2024. Right? And if you look at the silver price on this first parabolic advance in 1979, it's in 1980. Silver's come down to a similar price even in March, the March flash crash for C19. So this thing, if you think XRP is suppressed, I mean, fuck, silver. People that have been that started investing in this on the heavy rally in 1980 are still like barely anything has been. You could have just got in on the tech bubble burst in 2001, 2002, and it would have been a much better. Yeah. What has silver done since 2002? 500%. I mean, that's pretty fucking amazing for that particular asset. But 500%, I think Bitcoin has probably done that. Bitcoin has done like 1,000% move, I think, in the past like 5 years from the last cycle. But where are we at from the bottom? So Bitcoin has almost done a 380% move from the bottom of 2020 to where this is at in our current top. We took from the C19 around the C19 crash 800%, and that was just 4 years ago. Yeah, be careful with over investing, especially in silver, because you need so many coins, and I think people have their theories about a bartering society and all this, and I don't believe in that at all. I think skills are the only thing that are valuable. And in an AI world, in a tech advanced society, I don't think physical stuff is going to be important at all. Not in my opinion. It'll always be important to me, but I don't think the masses will recognize it, and the governments won't recognize it, of course. So the people are just so unconscious, like they don't really care to have a physical value system anymore. We're transcending through that into a new age. Hence why crypto is such an opportunity right now, and even NPCs believe in it. So yeah. All right. Moving on, let's get to just a quick final thought on silver in regards to upside targets. And I'm going to be very honest and say it's $40. It's going to be a flat number. 40 would be a wild rally to see go down in silver. I believe it might take until Q1 of 2025. But then above 40, you only have a little bit between that and price discovery. And it would be really tragic if silver got to 47 again and got rejected. Because, yeah, that would be a long wait. But also, on the other hand, a triple top is a bullish thing. And I do think that on that third drive to the upside, that will be the chance. Other thing to note about that is that's not a good thing for the fiat world. You know, fiat money is going to be, yeah. Yeah, it's a side note. But people who are thinking about a $3,000 per ounce of gold, yeah, gasoline is going to be up another 40%. All the food is going to be up another 100% next year. I mean, it's like, really, it's fucking nuts. Learn how to make cash flow. That's probably a lot more wise than stacking a bunch of precious metals coins at home. All right, we're looking at render. Let me see what's going on. Oh, is this a fresh chart? Cool. All right, we have a fresh chart over here with render. Really amazing from 2020 to where we are today. This thing is up 5,000%. Incredible move on this project. Very nice. Now, one thing to mention is that we did break out into momentary price discovery, but now we've effectively had a 64% correction, going even lower as of the last week than the lows that we saw from the past 150 days. We're back testing a key level that should hold, but if it can't, that's going to be dicey. I'm going to pull a fib real quick. I'll put this on a logarithmic scale. All right, so what happens is when you get this slight new higher high and then start to correct, it does sometimes like to gravitate back to the golden pocket, and in some iterations as deep as the 618. So if this thing is going to have a much deeper correction, I would look for that 618 also. That is a very clear area to me. Because we have this peak here, rejection, we got above this peak target, tried to hold it as a support and could not. And then once we broke below it and made a lower low here, this was where we headed into the selling climax of this bear market. Then we gravitated right back up to that line again before another rejection. And then once we were effectively able to break out, we went into price discovery. So if this thing wanted to have a much deeper correction from where it is now, or like an additional 40%, it would be coming back to around $2.70. That would be a pretty devastating move. That would be a 80% mid-cycle correction. And by the way, altcoins do that shit all the time. Let me show you. Right here from March 2021 to June 2021, this thing corrected 87%. So the people that are like, Waters, what are you saying right now? What couldn't possibly go that deep? I'm not making this shit up. This is an altcoin. Look at this correction. This was 70% mid-cycle correction. That was almost 87%, as you see. So when something has overextended and started to break out into new all-time highs and has effectively gone up 3,000% over the last year and a half, well, it could absolutely correct an additional 20 to 40% from where it is right now, easily. And that would be a healthy backtest target, believe it or not, because when these things are just breaking out and bullish and bullish and bullish, and they don't get back any gains, yeah, it's unhealthy, and it's not going to lead you to a longer developed chart. You know, one of the things that I've seen that I think is an example of a very good chart that has had like corrections along the way, but then keeps breaking out into price discovery is Caspa. I'll probably cover that maybe sometime next month, but that shit just keeps having a correction, breaking out again, correction, but it doesn't have these really wild, huge moves and then corrects 80% like you're going to see with a lot of this stuff. For example, It's like a much more sophisticated mover. I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe the community behind them is doing well. Maybe, unfortunately, maybe the dev team and the people that are behind Caspa are just pumping liquidity into it, like what they're doing with Tron. And that is super fucking dangerous. And if that's the case, then Mamma Mia, get ready for the rug of rugs. Because that's the shit that happened with Terra Luna, too. And all of the like Solana fanboys, you watch Solana lose 96% of its value at the end of the 2021 run, okay? Like, when companies are doing that type of shit where they're just keeping their own coin up with borrowed money, whoo, we watched that happen with Celsius, unfortunately. Like, that's not good. And I'm not accusing Caspa of that. It's just the way it's moving, it looks almost nearly impossible. But hey, I mean, if it is realistically doing what it's doing and it has a solid community backing it, then I think XRP community could learn a lot from those guys. The same thing with like Dogecoin, Shiba, like these really like, polarizing communities. The Pepe people. What's Pepe coin doing, by the way? I haven't looked at that in a while. Oh, okay. We're not reviewing Pepe today, but we're looking at a 50% correction from this local top at the 4236. That's dangerous. Anyways, Render, this recent break to the downside shows there's weakness here, and if it can't get caught at the top of the golden pocket, then this could absolutely slide below $3. And then that would be a awesome buying opportunity, because I do believe that this could extend into price discovery based off of this prior chart history. It can get bullish really easily. Let me pull this, like, $40 is in the cards for this. And if that's the case, then from where we're at right now to 40 is a fucking awesome play. I would not buy this now, though, being honest with you. I would not buy this right now because I do not like buying shit that's trading nearly at all-time highs. I made one exception for it, and it's Solana. It's the only exception I've made, and it's because I have a little bit of a theory, but it's a boom or bust, because I think Solana is also another one of these fraudulent companies that's using borrowed money and investing back in themselves. It's a fucking scam, but I think it's all a scam. It's kind of, crypto is just a big gambling casino. So there's nothing legitimate about any of this stuff. And it could get pulled at any time. Whenever the New World Order wants to take it out, they will. So yeah, it's a gamble to get invested in this, but that's why I do venture capital. That's why I only put 1.5 to 2.5% in a lot of this stuff, because if it gets wiped out, then I'm okay. My whole portfolio barely took a hit. But when you're all in on this stuff, like people were on Solana, I remember this vividly, everyone was piling in near the top, and then this thing took a tumble for 400 days. It lost 96% of its value. And then a lot of people feel like geniuses because they got in on this horizontal trading range. There's been a lot of gains since. I cannot deny that. But that wasn't the case for most people. Most people had to deal with buying top and dealing with it, losing all the value. Same thing with Terra Luna. 1 second, I'm just going to take a sip of this tea. All right. So yeah, I'm just letting you know why I'm not invested in this, because I don't buy stuff that's near top. It's just not, there's so many other opportunities out there, but I do feel good about this chart. It's pretty solid. And we got this red symbolism, finish off the year of the dragon with a solid performance. I don't think it won't make it to 40 within the year of the dragon, but there is a chance before March 2025 this could be a complete play. Oops. And I'll look into this more as time progresses, but you guys got my downside target. If this can't hold this 786 at $4, especially if it starts closing below $3.60, I think it'll slide down to this key level right here that I showed. Now we're moving on to Osmosis. Ticker symbol Osmo. Okay, this will be a quick one. This is a really bad chart. Like this is down 96% from its all-time high. Its whole correction it took was 98%. It rallied. I really don't like projects that do this. Look, it rallied 800%, and then off of this local top, it's down 80%. So it's had an 80% mid-cycle correction. horrifying. This is really the gambling casino, and it's a dangerous place to be. Okay, so look at this. We have our fib pulled from 11. I mean, if this has more chart history going in the past, you could let me know, but still, it doesn't negate everything I'm going to get into today, and I think that's important because sometimes when I overview charts, and there are charts out there that go back longer on certain exchanges, sometimes people get aggravated at that, but it's like the key points are what's been going on over the past 2 to 3 or 4 years. While Bitcoin is trading near its prior all-time high, this stuff is in the process of losing 80% of its value in the midst of a cycle. Like, there's nothing positive really to say about shit like that. You know what I mean? So big red flag. Also, the way of this correction and that type of correction right there, this thing had a legitimate crash in 100 days, just around 3 months. It lost 94% of its value. Like, I don't give a fuck what it did in the past if this is what it's doing lately. Okay, you know what I'm saying? It's like, imagine you were the heavyweight champion and you won and protected your title for 3 years, and then you get to a moment where, you know, you just become like a violent drunk and don't go to training anymore, and you get wiped out in the first round of your next big fight, and you lose your title, and then you get depressed about it, and then you start you like become a quitter, and then you don't go to training camp anymore, and then you get another fight lined up, and then you just are being awful in the press conference and not looking like a leader, and then you lose again, you know. And it's like, that's what this shit is. I don't care about your past if this is your current. When it comes to investment thesis, that's really how you have to look at it sometimes, because a lot of what we get involved in these altcoins is a complete speculative gamble at best. You know, it doesn't matter the dev team or the white paper or all the other nonsense that goes on behind a lot of projects, because I've seen some of the best white papers, some of the best dev teams with a laundry list of, you know, prior projects that they've done that are successful, and that stuff goes to zero because it's just the crypto casino. I hope this helps. I know it's the red pill, but that's why we call it the Red Pill Podcast. So yeah, this is not good at all. This sell-off coming back up to the 236 fib, getting rejected off the 236 fib, and now it's still going lower as I speak over the past week. This is really dangerous. So yeah, the bottom for this is forever down. This is effectively in price discovery to the downside, as far as I can tell, based off this chart. But this Christmas tree top in the midst of quote unquote crypto bull run is not a very promising asset to position in. So I would not personally be touching this, even though it is in my range below the 236 and the bottom. That's where I do like to get in venture capital positions, because just look at the upside potential of this. This is like about $2,800% to the upside to just get back to all-time highs. But the question is can it? Not everything will. If stuff that's top 50 market cap in the last cycle couldn't, what makes this random project able to, right? So be careful with some of that stuff, even though I've mentioned in the past, like part of the investment thesis in venture capital is getting within the prior all-time high going to get you 1,000%. I mean, that's incredible opportunity. But you're talking about 1% of your portfolio. That's not Waters telling you, hey, just YOLO 80% of your portfolio into some speculative shitcoin because it has the opportunity to go up 1,000%. That's not what I said. This is the stuff that I would play venture capital, but I would pass on this particular project for several reasons. Okay, now we're going to finish up today's podcast with Harmony One. Not an OG, because it really wasn't created in the last cycle during the NFT craze, which I'm glad that bubble popped because that was horrifying. I'm just adjusting this a little bit. Also, don't get triggered by what I just said about NFTs, but like NFTs were very cringy. I don't want our world to just become fairy dust, like complete fairy. Like fairy dust is already of the essence, but like, are we really just gonna give up everything and say like an 8-bit pixelated 200 megapixel thumbnail is like somehow art? We're fucked. Like the next generation is gonna be like scrolling on TikTok at a museum, you know? Like they're not even gonna look at the paintings anymore. We're gonna be like, who gives a shit? Who's Picasso? I don't know. Never heard of him. Even though it's funny, Picasso's art was like started to get off the rails like midway through his career. But that was kind of cool, right? Like to get to that I don't give a fuck moment and just do whatever you want and still be a legend. That's a lot different than making an 8-bit like a Microsoft Paint image and being like, look at this NFT, it's exclusive, 8 out of 10. Like, what are we doing? Anywho, getting back to Harmony One. This thing has pretty much lost all of its value from the prior peak. We're still down 97% from the local top, which means that there's a lot of upside potential. Even getting back to this prior cycle peak and the secondary cycle peak, which had this M pattern, which broke bearish, which is very typical. You're looking at somewhere between 1,000% at the 702 fib, all the way up to almost a little bit above 3,000%, getting to the past all-time high around 30 cents. So if this shit could be bought back to the prior cycle peak, that would be an amazing move. You don't even need price discovery. Issue is, look at how weak it's been lately. And you saw I adjusted that trend line a little bit ago because we had some touch points in the past of the recent bear market, 1, 2, 3. After this third rejection, we went lower, which is very typical. Then we get bought back into it, and then another rejection. So this is a key trend line. And this key trend line has been in play now for 700 days. So when we got above it into March, which a lot of altcoins were bullish into March, it gravitated back to it, tried to hold it for a little bit. 1 second. Apologies, my throat is getting super dry. It's a sign that I need to wrap this up. So, but I want to give an honest final review on the TA here. So all of these rejections on this key trend line, we popped up above it, back tested it, but could not hold. And then in June, just a couple months ago, broke below this trend line and then came back up to it and got rejected again. So this is looking super, super, super weak. And this is something that you would really only want to be looking at as venture capital, again, because all of these gains that it had in the last cycle was off of the cultural moment of NFTs. And we've gotten through that already. It doesn't have the same allure that it once had. I don't believe it ever will. It was a tax evasion. It was like a scam in so many different ways. So yeah, you don't want to be cultural moment heavy. All right. I warned about GameStop for the same reason. I've warned about Pepe for the same reason. There's nothing wrong with this shit. It's just you gotta watch out because the volatility to the positive side of things is only when it's popular and trending. And then once the trend is up, well, guess what? So is the investment. And that's why you should be careful. Now, if you're a professional trader and you know how to navigate the cultural moment, then kudos to you. You're going to be doing very well in this market. Trust me, especially in cryptocurrency, because there's a new meme being created every other day, but you need to know how to play that. Most people don't. And it's important that you become a solid investor before you get really good at being a gambler, right? Because one thing, you have a long enough time horizon to park excess money into carefully, conservatively, and have some sort of a plan and goal. The other one, you really just have to manage emotion on the day-to-day. And you have to be researching all the time. What's new? Whatever event happens, you got to find what new Solana-based shitcoin has been created over the last 24 hours to throw $100 in. It's an exhausting life. I've seen it take the soul out of so many people, and then they end up reverting back to what we're talking about here, which is just investing in stuff. And that's what's cool about venture capital and what I would call this project right here, because with venture capital, a little goes a long way. As you can see, just getting back within prior cycle peak is about a 2,000% move, and you don't need to play around with the crazy trading all day stuff. Again, it's good for some people. If you're interested in that, my advanced trading course teaches you how to do that safely and profitably, but it's not my recommended thing unless you have the essence to do it and to do it right. But yeah, with that being said, I'm not really too stoked on this particular chart because of where it's at today. Because I've seen a couple of altcoins break a little bit lower than the June and July lows, it wouldn't shock me if this thing came back into a fraction of a penny. So a fraction of a penny on Harmony 1 is in the cards, especially if Bitcoin pulls back a little bit deeper to fill that lower CME gap. And that's where I'm going to wrap up today's podcast. We have Bitcoin looked a little bit bullish during the beginning of the podcast. Today, we're definitely pulling back. We have the CME opening up a little bit later today. That's crucial because we will probably have a gap to the upside in that case. Where we are opening up CME around 60K Bitcoin, but we should pretty much fill this lower gap, get it out of the way, pop back up. We could have that 5 to day 7 bullish fake out move that I brought up because of Mercury retrogrades pattern. So over the next 48 hours, we could definitely see some more downside potential. Into the end of this week, a little bit of a buyback for the Mercury retrograde analysis, and then into the 33rd week of the year, things are probably going to get super spicy, but I do believe that will be the pivot point through the next full moon. So I appreciate every single one of you. I will make sure to give you a midweek update if needed, but until then, wishing you all a amazing rest of your weekend in the Matrix. Much love.